Have you ever walked away from a conversation where you said everything, but still felt unheard? Where your voice was present, but your presence was invisible? Have you ever felt that strange, hollow ache in your throat, not because you stayed silent, but because you gave too much? Because every word you offered felt like a compromise? Perhaps you've lived your life as the peacemaker, the one who stays calm while others interrupt, overtalk, mock, manipulate. Perhaps your empathy became your invisibility. And maybe, just maybe, you mistook your silence for surrender. You thought not defending yourself meant losing. You thought not reacting meant weakness. You thought keeping peace meant keeping connection. But what if I told you that your silence wasn't your downfall? It was your power waiting to be reclaimed. Not an absence, but a signal, a shield, a sword. What if you could learn to turn that silence into presence, into boundary, into a gravity that others can feel, but cannot touch? The world tells you. Speak louder. Be clearer. Defend yourself. Prove your worth. But Nietzsche saw the truth buried beneath that noise. He said, "Those who talk too much reveal too much. Those who need to convince are already at a disadvantage." What he meant was this: power does not announce itself. It does not explain. It does not plead. Power simply is. We live in a culture of constant justification, a society where silence is feared because it cannot be controlled. You are taught to believe that if you do not speak, others will win. But Nietzsche knew better. He saw that this urge to defend is not strength. It is fear wearing the mask of certainty. The need to prove one's point, he implied, is already a sign that you have lost your center. Because when your truth depends on approval, it is no longer truth. It is negotiation. Let me ask you something. Why do you feel that impulse to respond, to explain, to make them see you clearly? Because you were raised to believe that understanding equals safety, that being seen equals being loved, that being liked equals being real. But this is the illusion of connection, and it has cost you your boundaries. The deeper reality? Every time you try to explain your worth, you step away from it. Every time you justify your boundaries, you hand over their power. Every time you argue for your dignity, you silently confess it's still up for debate. This is how the world takes from you, without ever needing to ask. There's a quote I want you to remember. Nietzsche said, "Most people do not seek the truth when they argue. They seek power." This is not about clarity. It's about control. And here's the trap. Every time you try to correct them, you enter their arena, their rules, their chaos. You've already lost. Because silence is not weakness. It's a boundary they can't cross. You see, you were taught to win arguments. But the wise do not win arguments. They outgrow the need to have them. Argumentation, Nietzsche warned, is not a tool of wisdom. It is a desperate cry from the ego to maintain control of the narrative. Let that settle for a moment. Your need to explain is their entry point. Every defense you offer is a small betrayal of your center. So how do you return to yourself? You stop speaking to be understood, and you start standing in truth, even if no one understands. You let your silence become a mirror, and that mirror will do the work. Because when you no longer react, others are left with themselves. And that silence? It's louder than any argument. Nietzsche called this transformation the death of herd morality. He said, "The herd morality is the behavior of those who live under the expectations of others, who want to be seen as good, correct, just. But true strength," he said, "is not in convincing others. It is in holding your vision, even in the face of laughter, criticism, rejection. It is in being misunderstood and remaining unshaken." And that is what we are here to do, to reclaim the ground you've lost, to rebuild the inner fortress that silence once protected, to turn boundaries into art, to turn sovereignty into silence, to speak not in reaction, but in presence, to become untouchable, not because you fight harder, but because you no longer need to fight at all. There are wounds you don't feel until you stop bleeding. There are thefts you don't notice until you reclaim what was stolen. There's a kind of robbery that leaves no fingerprints, no broken windows, no forced doors, no sound in the night, only a feeling that something is missing. Your peace, your strength, your clarity, yourself. You don't remember giving it away, But day after day, you notice the exhaustion, the irritability, the confusion, the fading spark in your eyes. Somewhere along the line, you stopped being centered and started being available. This is the invisible theft, the quiet erosion of your boundaries. And it's not just about the loud people in the room. It's about the energy they pull from you without your permission. The unspoken contracts you never signed but somehow keep fulfilling. You walk into a space with peace in your chest and walk out feeling like a ghost. You offer kindness, and they take authority. You hold silence, and they fill it with dominance. This is not just about noise. This is about emotional gravity, the way some people collapse into your presence and drag your energy into their chaos. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's unconscious, but that doesn't make it less real, and it doesn't make you any less empty. Nietzsche understood this. He didn't just speak of will and silence. He warned us about the way the weak pretend to be strong by consuming the strong who remain quiet. He said, "The fragile ego cannot stand being questioned. It confuses disagreement with attack. You're not being drained because you're weak. You're being drained because they fear the space you hold. And so, they must fill it." You were never taught how to defend your energy. You were taught to be agreeable, to be polite, to smile even when you're uncomfortable, to listen even when your soul is screaming to leave the room. You were trained to be a host, but never a guardian. So, let's name the thefts. When someone speaks over you and you shrink back into silence. When they mock your calmness and call it passivity. When they dismiss your feelings and call it logic. When they drain your time, your empathy, your insight, without giving anything back. These are not small things. They are micro-betrayals of your sovereignty. And each time you say nothing, a piece of your inner authority is bartered away. The reactive mind is a subjugated mind. The observing mind, that is the dangerous one. Nietzsche reminded us. Why? Because the reactive mind plays the game, but the observing mind watches the game burn. This is what manipulators fear the most. Your unavailability, your silence, your refusal to perform the emotional labor they demand. Because manipulators don't feed on words. They feed on your reactions. And when you stop giving them, they starve. There is a psychology to this. Social psychology shows that in confrontational settings, silence is perceived as judgment. When you say nothing, the other begins to hear everything they fear. Is she judging me? Did he notice my lie? Do they see how insecure I really am? The mind starts to unravel in the face of quiet, because silence removes the distraction of your reaction. And now, they are left with their own. And that is terrifying. This is how your calm becomes a mirror. And that mirror becomes a weapon. You didn't do anything. You didn't say anything. And yet, they panic. Because silence, real silence, is not passive. It's invasive. It's intimate. It's surgical. It reaches inside people and unmasks them. Silence is a form of language, Nietzsche wrote. A language that does not try to convince. It imposes presence. Let that settle. Your presence, when rooted in self-sovereignty, imposes. It does not entertain. It does not explain. It does not bend to comfort others' chaos. But here's the twist. Sometimes, you are the one being invaded, and you don't even notice. Because you confuse exhaustion for connection, guilt for compassion, people-pleasing for peace. And that is where the deepest theft occurs. When your own silence becomes a scream you can't hear anymore. This is why boundaries are not just about saying no. They're about recognizing when you've already said yes too many times. It's time to learn the art of emotional fencing, not as a reaction, but as a posture, a presence, a sacred stance, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Because the truth is, you owe no one your energy, not when it costs your center, not when it spills your power. You do not need to explain your fatigue. You do not need to justify your withdrawal. You do not need to be liked to be real. This is what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of the Übermensch. The Übermensch does not live by reacting to the world. He shapes the world in his own image. The strong do not respond to chaos. They rise above it. They protect their peace like it is sacred, because it is. In the next act, we will talk about how to draw the line. not with anger, but with elegance, not with rage, but with rhythm. We will explore the philosophy of no and how the right no can set you free, because silence is not enough if you are not grounded in what it's protecting. To say no is not to push the world away. It is to let the truth in. You were not born knowing how to say no. You were trained to smile when uncomfortable, to nod when disrespected, to stay silent when your soul begged you to speak. You were praised for being agreeable, applauded for being easy, rewarded for being flexible, adaptable, selfless. And you believed that being kind meant being open, that being good meant being available, that being loved meant being without edges. But love without edges becomes erasure. There is no freedom in a yes that violates your truth. There is no peace in a silence that guards another's comfort but betrays your own soul. So let us say what was never said to you. Your no is holy. No is a boundary. No is a decision. No is a declaration that your time, your energy, your presence are not infinite. No is not rejection. It is protection. It is not aggression. It is alignment. But saying no takes strength, because it means you're willing to be misunderstood. You're willing to disappoint. You're willing to walk away without explaining yourself. That kind of strength is rare, but it is the strength of the sovereign. Nietzsche understood this. He said, "True strength lies not in convincing others, but in not needing to explain, not needing to be liked, not needing to be chosen, because the sovereign self chooses themselves." And that kind of clarity terrifies people. We've been taught to believe that boundaries push people away. But in truth, boundaries are what make real connection possible. Without them, there is no you in the relationship, only a shape that fits someone else's needs. When you say yes out of guilt, you are not giving. You are abandoning. You are abandoning your peace to protect their comfort. You are abandoning your truth to uphold their illusion. That is not kindness. That is martyrdom. And martyrdom is the death of the self offered as a gift to those who never asked for it. This is the silent epidemic of our time. People-pleasing dressed as compassion. Boundarylessness sold as virtue. Self-sacrifice glorified as love. But love without truth is not love. Let us rewrite the myth. To say no is not to be cruel. It is to be clear. To say no is not to be selfish. It is to be sovereign. To say no is not to reject others. It is to refuse to reject yourself. And yes, people will not like it, because your no will disrupt their assumptions. Your no will challenge their entitlement. Your no will ask them to confront themselves. But that is not your burden to carry. The need to be accepted by others is exactly what keeps you weak. Nietzsche said, "You do not owe anyone the performance of pleasantness. You owe yourself the reality of peace." There's a deeper layer here, because boundaries are not just for others. They're for you, for the parts of you that keep running back to what hurts, for the inner child that still fears abandonment, for the version of you that thinks worth must be earned through exhaustion. Boundaries are not fences to keep people out. They are lines to keep you in. A sovereign self is not someone who isolates. It is someone who self-selects, who chooses where their energy flows, who chooses what dynamics are worthy of their presence, who chooses what voices echo inside their soul. This is why silence alone is not enough, because silence without boundaries is not strength. It is self-erasure, and you were not born to disappear in someone else's comfort. So how do you begin? Start small. Start with the pause between stimulus and response. The moment where your nervous system tightens, but your mouth wants to say yes. Breathe into that pause. And in that breath, remind yourself, you do not need to perform safety for others. You are not responsible for their disappointment. You are not the keeper of their comfort. Then say it. No. With no justification, no elaborate explanation, no apology for existing. Just no. Soft, clear, final. That one syllable can unearth the foundations of your life, because it will reveal who loves you for you, and who only loves your compliance. It will shake the foundations of relationships built on convenience, and it will liberate you from dynamics you didn't even know were prisons. Nietzsche said, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." That is the essence of boundaries. to obey yourself, to be ruled from within, to protect the space in which your soul can breathe. You are not a guest in your own soul. You are the ruler. Build a kingdom no one can touch. Now that the noise has been silenced, now that your no has drawn the sacred line, there is space. And in that space, you remember who you are. Not a reflection, not a reaction, not a performance, but a sinner, a force, a sovereign. Most people think freedom is found in escape, in running from what binds them, in tearing down the walls of what oppresses them. But freedom is not found in flight. It is found in rooting, in becoming immovable, in building something the world cannot infiltrate. That something is your sacred space. What is sacred space? It is the invisible territory around your spirit, the psychic circle that defines where you begin and the world ends, the emotional castle that protects your clarity, your silence, your inner law. It is not selfish. It is self-honoring. And without it, you do not live. You only survive. Nietzsche never called us to escape the world. He called us to transcend it from within. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. And your why, your reason, cannot be found in chaos. It must be discovered in the quiet, and then guarded with your life. Most people have no sacred space. They live in a house without walls. Every voice enters. Every opinion reshapes them. Every expectation drags their soul into a storm. They are overrun by the noise of the collective, and then they wonder why they feel so lost. Self-sovereignty is not arrogance. It is not selfish detachment. It is the deep discipline of being grounded. It is waking up each morning and choosing to rule yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions, not to dominate them, but to govern them. A sovereign self is not controlled by impulse. It is not moved by validation. It does not surrender to guilt or fear. It knows. My soul is not a democracy. To be sovereign is to know the difference between access and intimacy. Everyone may see you, but few may touch you. Even fewer may shape you. That is not distance. That is discipline. You are not meant to be emotionally porous. You are not meant to absorb every vibration in the room. You are not meant to open yourself to every loud personality or urgent request. You are not a public square. You are a sacred temple, and temples are not open 24/7. But sovereignty is not isolation. It is discernment. Who belongs in your inner court? Who earns the right to sit in your silence? Who can speak into your depths without contaminating your clarity? This is the art of self-curation. This is the power of the sacred gatekeeper within. Nietzsche spoke of this when he said, "The one who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises. But the one who has lost all respect cannot command. You cannot command your life if you've let it become a hallway, a corridor for other people's energies to pass through. You must build doors, locks, keys, not out of fear, but out of sacred self-regard. There's something else here. The world will never honor your space until you do. People treat your energy how you treat it. If you throw your time around, they will too. If you explain yourself endlessly, they will demand more. If you apologize for having needs, they will expect you not to have any. This is why inner sovereignty begins not with rules for others, but with vows to yourself. Try this. I will no longer explain my peace to those who only understand chaos. I will not light myself on fire to warm those who bring no wood of their own. My silence is not emptiness. It is fullness with no need to perform. Your sacred space becomes your throne when you choose to sit in it, not to wait for someone to give you permission, but to own it, fully, unapologetically, gracefully. And here's the paradox. When you build sacred space, you actually love better, because now you love from overflow, not from depletion. You speak with intention, not as defense. You give from choice, not from compulsion. This is what the world is starved for. Not more access, more depth, not more talking, more presence, not more answers, more inner alignment. The sovereign soul radiates a quiet power, not the power of dominance, but the power of emotional self-governance. A power that says, I am home, I am whole, I am not waiting to be chosen. I have chosen myself. Power is not in what you say. It is in what you refuse to explain. There comes a moment, after the silence has been claimed, after the boundaries have been drawn, after the sovereign has risen, when you become untouchable, not because no one reaches for you, but because their reach no longer shakes your root. You have become the edge. What is the edge? It is the place where you end and the world begins. It is not a wall. It is a flame. It does not block. It burns through illusion. To live on the edge is to live in a constant state of alignment, where your yes is true, where your no is firm, where your silence is charged, where your gaze speaks louder than performance ever could. You don't need to defend yourself, because your very presence is defense. You don't need to be seen, because you have become the seeing. You are not the echo anymore. You are the original sound. This is where most people hesitate, because the edge is lonely. It is intense. It is magnetic. It cannot be domesticated. And in a world that rewards conformity, you will scare those still addicted to approval. But you weren't born to be soft clay in the hands of others. You were born to be the blade forged in solitude. Nietzsche knew this power. He wrote, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. When you become the edge, you will appear too much, too sharp, too silent, too sovereign. But it is not your job to shrink. It is your task to rise above the fog of misunderstanding and stand as a mirror. Because here's the truth. You will never be fully understood by those who fear their own depth. You will always be misread by those who need you to be predictable. And so, to become the edge is to become peaceful with being misperceived. It is to no longer defend your depth, to shallow eyes. You are not a brand. You are not a label. You are not a collection of traits to be digested easily. You are a force, a movement, a presence. And the edge is where that presence becomes precise. It is the moment in a conversation when you don't flinch, the silence between their manipulation and your unbroken stillness. It is the look that says, I know exactly who I am, even as they try to distort your truth. The edge is subtle, but it's lethal. And it takes mastery, not over others, but over yourself. Because to be the edge, you must be sharp but grounded, dangerous but disciplined, mysterious but honest. You must be the paradox they can't pin down. There's a kind of psychological gravity to a person who holds the edge. They walk into a room and change the frequency, not because they speak loudly, but because they carry the energy of someone who doesn't chase. They do not try to belong. They become the space in which others want to belong. And here lies your deepest transformation. You are no longer emotionally available for every vibration. You are no longer psychologically bendable by every opinion. You are no longer spiritually accessible to every wandering soul. You have become the edge, and that is your liberation. But this edge is not sharpness for the sake of ego. It is not superiority. It is sovereignty, a quiet knowing that says, I do not fear being misunderstood because I am no longer explainable. You are not here to prove. You are here to be. And when you are, fully, you no longer fight. You reveal. You no longer defend. You decide. You no longer explain. You embody. This is not detachment. This is power without performance. So, how do you know you've reached this edge? When people test you and your silence becomes louder than their shouting. When the manipulator's confusion grows in the face of your unshakable calm. When you don't panic when misunderstood. When you walk away not to punish, but to preserve. That is edge. That is sovereignty. That is sacred silence, sharpened into presence. Let them wonder. Let them spiral. Let them try to decode your calm. You owe no one the keys to your temple. Your life is not a group discussion. It is an artwork in progress. And not everyone gets to witness the strokes up close. Nietzsche knew the edge well. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. You are not here to fight monsters anymore. You are here to outgrow them. You are not here to match energy. You are here to raise frequency. You are not here to win debates. You are here to exit the room with your soul intact. When the noise dies and the masks fall, what remains is what rules. This is the summit, not the applause, not the argument won, not the recognition gained, but the silence within, that no one can touch. This is the quiet crown. You do not wear it to be seen. You do not wear it to impress. You do not even wear it to protect. You wear it because you've earned it. You've walked through the fire of false belonging. You've tasted the bitterness of being misunderstood. You've stood still while others shouted, blamed, distorted. And yet, you did not kneel. You held your ground, not with force, but with truth. The quiet crown is not placed on your head by the world. It is placed there by your own unwavering presence. You wear it the moment you stop performing, for acceptance that costs your soul. You wear it when your silence is no longer empty, but full of power, clarity, and choice. You are not above others, but you are beyond manipulation. You are not louder than others, but your silence echoes louder than their words. You are not trying to prove. You are the proof, and the crown glows, not because of gold, but because it was forged in the dark, under pressure, by solitude, and by the refusal to betray yourself. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. Nietzsche. The crown is your why turned into presence. It is not worn on stages, but in stillness. The world tells you, to be liked, you must bend. To be loved, you must shrink. To be heard, you must shout. But your crown tells you, stand, expand, be silent, because you already know. And here is the paradox of all power. The more you need to prove it, the less of it you have. Real power walks softly. It does not campaign. It does not beg. It simply is. And the world adjusts. You see, your quiet crown is not something people give you. It is what they feel when they cannot define you, when they can't find the script to control you, when they realize you are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are busy choosing yourself. That's why the crown is feared, because it cannot be manipulated. It is not ego. It is not armor. It is essence. It is the distilled truth of everything you've walked through and everything you've reclaimed. It is presence without permission. There is one more thing you must know. The quiet crown is not a reward for being silent. It is the result of being so deeply whole that you don't need the world to echo back your worth. You do not speak to be known. You speak because there is something real inside you that must be shared. And even then, you share it as a gift, not as a plea. At this level, boundaries are not something you set. They are something you are. People feel it before you speak. They adjust before they offend. They lower their voice without you asking. This is what sacred energy does. It bends the room without breaking a word. So how do you walk with the quiet crown? You speak only when it aligns with your truth. You choose stillness when others expect chaos. You remove yourself with dignity when your energy is no longer honored. And most of all, you stay inwardly loyal to yourself, no matter how seductive the noise becomes. In individuals, insanity is rare. But in groups, parties, nations, and epics, it is the rule. Nietzsche. The crown is sanity in a mad world. It is sacred silence in a screaming crowd. It is sovereign presence in an age of projection. And now, after all the storms, after all the no's, after all the unspoken truths, you are still here, more centered, more clear, more you. That is the power. That is the crown. So what now? Now, you walk. You walk through this world with less urgency and more gravity. You let your energy speak first. You know when to stay. You know when to leave. You do not chase. You attract clarity. And you know, finally, that the one who controls their silence controls the entire conversation. The world may never applaud your inner throne, but it will always respond to it, because nothing disrupts a world addicted to noise like someone who knows how to be still and still be powerful. So rise, sit tall in your presence, wear the crown you forged through fire and solitude, not with pride, but with peace, because now you know. You do not need to fight. You do not need to explain. You do not need to shout. You only need to be. And that is enough. Silence is not the absence of something, but the presence of everything. Anonymous. You are everything now, and the world will never touch you the same again.